Hi, my name is Natalie and I write books, and today I'm going to participate in, a little late, the mid-year book freakout tag. So what does that mean? I am sure you already know if you watch your fair share of AuthorTube and BookTube content, but if you don't, let me introduce you to the newest rabbit hole that you are going to jump down. Basically a series of 14 questions or prompts that are just made to get you talking about some of the books that you read in the first half of the year. All in the hopes that maybe we can commiserate over a book that we both read together that we either did not love or loved a lot, or I can just introduce you to a few new books that maybe you want to add to your own reading list. But enough chit chat, let's just dive straight into the first prompt. Best book you've read so far in 2024. For me, it's going to be Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This book. Let me just start by saying this is not for everybody, and I fully acknowledge that. First off, this is solidly an adult book. Some people will try to tell you it's YA. It is definitely not YA. This is a dark urban fantasy. There's magic, there's horror. It's got a little bit of everything. Definitely some content warnings that you should look up before you read it. This book is so twisty and intelligent and just so well written, and I love Leigh Bardugo's language and how she creates characters that are somehow deeply unlikable but lovable at the same time. People who have flaws that you're like, wow, they're probably really annoying. But then she reveals why you should love them and why their humanity is what makes them so interesting. The characters are complex and messy and real. I'll say that this book does start slow, but it picks up, and boy, when it picks up, like, I could not put this down. I needed to know what happened. The twist at the end, oh my gosh. It was wild. It was wild, and it made me so excited to read the next book. Which actually brings me to the next prompt. Best sequel you read so far in 2024. So staying on the Leigh Bardugo train, the best sequel I read this year was Hellbent, which is the sequel to Ninth House. And I will say, I didn't love it as much as I loved the first one, but it was also so twisty, so well written. The same gritty, messed up, lovable characters, and just such a good setup for like the universe to come, like what could be the next however many books. I think Leigh Bardugo said she originally wanted like a 10-book series or something wild, and they cut it back to like 5, which, like, even 5 books in a series, like, little author rant real quick, like, selling a series right now is nearly impossible. And the fact that Leigh Bardugo is a huge writer. She wrote Shadow and Bone, a massive series, a massive universe, and they made it into a Netflix show with 2 seasons. Like, she's very well known, very good author, and she had a hard time selling a big series to her publishers. Like, what? So the fact that she's still getting maybe 5 books out of this, I'm so excited to read all of them. It is just such an interesting universe that she's created, and if horror and like dark fantasy is your vibe, definitely check it out. If it's not, I'm telling you right now, this book is not for you, and that's okay. New release that you haven't read yet but want to. What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez, I want to say. I should know how to pronounce her name. I'm from New Mexico, but I don't. This book is pitched as The Mummy meets Death on the Nile, but with romance. I'm sorry. Like, I'm sold. I'm so in. The only reason I have not read it yet is because I want to buy the book, and it's only in hardcover right now, and I hate hardcover books. And sometimes I make an exception and I do get hardcover books, but this book is like massive. It's so tall and big and awkward and doesn't fit in my tiny baby hands, and so I refuse. And I am not so patiently waiting for the paperback to come out, which I don't even think they've announced a date for. At this point, I'll probably just get a Kindle and read it on Kindle before the paperback will come out. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Apprentice to the Villain by Nicole Maehrer, I think is her name. So last year I read, where is it? It's right behind me. Assistant to the Villain. If you haven't read this book, I want to start by saying this is not Nobel Prize literature. But she doesn't pretend to be. What's it pitched as? It's like The Office meets like, I don't know, fantasy. It's so funny, and like, the characters are delightful and the romance is so cute. And if you just want to have a good time, just like a straight up good time, this is the book for you. Her sequel comes out actually today. I am filming this August 6th and the book releases today, and my Amazon driver is currently on the way to drop off the book to me because I pre-ordered it. Like literally I'm tracking him in the app and he is 8 stops away. So I am so excited to read this book, especially since Assistant to the Villain ended on such a massive cliffhanger. And so I have heard that the start of the next book is kind of shocking, and I don't know what that means, but I'm so excited to read it. Biggest disappointment. So if you've been on this channel for a bit, you know that I don't really talk about books I don't like, because I acknowledge that there's books for everybody, and even books that I might not like, I know other people like a lot. So I don't like to put that negative energy into the world. That being said, it's a part of the prompt, so I am going to tell you what book I did not like this year. I really went into it so excited. The book is called Lightlark by Aster. This was pitched to me as the new Hunger Games. Not necessarily in plot, kind of in plot, but more just that they thought it would be as big as Hunger Games. Like there's a movie coming out and everything. And this was a book talk book that got famous really fast, and I love that for this author. Good for her. I love that she's selling so many books and that she has a series coming. But it was not for me. I'm gonna read you the premise, because the premise is like so good. So there are 6 rulers of 6 realms that have all different curses, and once every 100 years they compete in a series of contests to try and break their curses. Like, that sounds epic. That sounds awesome. The execution was not that. I think my main issue is just that the world building is really confusing. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and then the plot gets muddled down. Another ick for me is there was this love triangle romance. And the main character is like older teenager. I don't remember her age, but somewhere in the 16 to like 19 age range. And her 2 love interests are both over 500 years old. And that's just gross to me. Like, I'm sorry. The era of Twilight has ended, and I feel like you can't do that anymore. It wasn't for me. I did read the whole book because I wanted to know how things were going to be wrapped up, so I guess it was good enough that I didn't DNF it. I don't know, man. Let me know if you read it and felt differently. Biggest surprise. This was, without a doubt, a book I've talked about before on this channel, Stolen World by Jennie Erin Smith, I want to say. So I've talked about this before. This is a nonfiction book about the illegal reptile trade. And like, long story short, I know someone who knows someone who's in this book. And she didn't want to read it because she like kind of didn't want to know about this person. And I was like, well, I'll read it for you and I'll just tell you everything. And oh my goodness, I am so glad I have this information in my brain now. This is very niche and not for everyone, but if you are a history nerd like me and you like these micro histories, you should check it out. I learned so much. Favorite new author, either a debut or new to you. For me, this is Adalyn Grace. Now, she's someone I found on Instagram when she was promoting her book, Belladonna. And the cover was so gorgeous that I was like, I don't even know what it's about, but I want to read it. I have since read that book and its sequel, Foxglove. And the 3rd book comes out, I think, before the end of the year. I've also read her duology that came before that, which is All the Stars and Teeth, I want to say. It's like a pirate mermaid fantasy. Adalyn Grace is just so much fun. Like, she has such great premises and this really beautiful flowery language that doesn't feel elaborate or drags on too long, and she is really good at romance. And I just like, I'll read anything she puts out now. New fan for life here. Newest fictional crush. This was very early in the year. I read the sequels to Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. And in the second and third books, she introduces Prince Nikolai Lantsov. And I'm in love with him. I don't know what to tell you. Like, he is so fun and mischievous and smart and knows exactly what he's doing at all times, 50 steps ahead of everyone. But he's also just humorous and charming, and I don't want to spoil it. I will say he is kind of a love interest for the main character there, but more than anything, he just respects her so much, and he understands that he might not be her choice, and that's okay. And I feel like sometimes in love triangles, there's this like need that both of the people have to be like so deeply in love with this third person and like obsessed with them. And I feel like he understands that while he likes her and he wants to be with her, that might not be her choice. And he says, I'll fight for you if you want me to, but I am not going to force you into something you don't want. And I really respect that. Newest favorite character. So this is in the same vein and also by the same author. In Ninth House, we are introduced to basically a kid that's called Daniel Arlington, but everyone calls him Darlington. And I must have a type because he is also like 20 steps ahead of everyone. Very smart, a little bit snarky, the tiniest touch of socially awkward, just not interested in like wasting his time on something he's not interested in, and can relate. He is so fun, and his chemistry with every other character in the book is just delightful. And I feel like he and I would be really good friends. So he is definitely a new favorite character. Good for Leigh Bardugo. Like, she's writing good characters out here. I can learn something from her. Book that made you cry. This was Happy Place by Emily Henry. And yeah, technically this is like, would fall in the rom-com category. The book is wonderful and the romance is great. But what made me cry is the representation of female friendship. The book is all about how you change and how your friends change, and how, as you all might live in different places, as much as you try to see each other, it can be really hard to see each other even once a year. And you might be going through a different life phase than your friends, and that can cause a strain on the relationship. But despite it all, you fight to remain friends because you love them. Me? No, I wouldn't know anything about that. No, not me and my best friends who literally live all around the continent. Anyway, I sobbed. Book that made you happy. Shiver by Maggie S., whose last name I have still not learned how to say. Stiefvater? I don't know. This is a reread because this was a book and a series that I read when I was a teenager. And I loved it as a teenager, and I kind of just wanted to see if it held up, right? And it did. It totally did. It is just the sweetest love story and the most beautiful prose. It's very lyrical and slow-paced, but with enough stuff happening that you never feel like the plot isn't moving forward. It's just a beautiful little YA love story, and some people have called it Twilight if you were Team Jacob. And they are not wrong. It's a great little book. Highly recommend it if you just need like a palate cleanser. Most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. So because we already talked about Belladonna, which I already said was a beautiful cover, reminder, this is what it looks like. I am going to say 100 Days of Sunlight by Abbie Emmons. Just look how gorgeous that is. And like all the details of like different things that appear in the story. It's just so beautiful. As a fellow author tuber, I have wanted to read this for a while just to support her, but also because there's a disabled love interest in this book. And if you know anything about me, you know that I am always looking for that representation in books. This cover is just, I think it's because it's yellow that I like it so much. That's my favorite color, but it's just so pretty. It's just so, look at that. Oh, it's just gorgeous. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? Listen, I have a handful of books on this list, but what I'm just gonna come down and say is I read kind of whatever I want whenever the feeling strikes. So I don't have a TBR like everybody else does. I know some people will like pick out their books that they're gonna read for the month. That's not me. What I need to do is finish a book and then choose the next book. That's kind of just how I roll. So I would love to read the new Emily Henry book. I would love to read Apprentice to the Villain. I would love to read Fourth Wing again before the new one comes out. There's a lot of stuff I have to do, right? But I don't like to explicitly plan what books I'm gonna read because maybe I don't feel like reading them this year. Maybe I'll read them next year. Maybe I'll never read them and I just felt like adding it in the moment, but I'm not actually interested. Basically what I'm trying to say is I am the worst type of mood reader and I don't pick what I'm gonna read ahead of time. Favorite book community member? For me, I mainly watch author tubers that also do booktube content, so I'm gonna share a couple of those. My favorites right now are Christy Ann Jones, Sincerely V, and Taylor Ann Wright. Check them out, go leave some love on their videos. I think they're great creators, I think you will too. Comment down below what book you enjoyed most this year. I'm always looking to add books to my TBR and it might just be yours. Bye! I can do blah, 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 blah. Like, what was that? In between. What did I do with my hands? What is this? Am I a locomotive?